N'Keal Harry was an absolute steal at 32. What are you guys talking about? Forget Tom Brady's passing numbers. He's the GOAT because he was the best punter in the NFL. I take Johnny Hecker over Patrick Mahomes to be my quarterback any day.
Welcome to the No Punt Intended Sportscast with your host, Parody07.
Welcome back to the No Punt Intended Sportscast. I'm your host, Guy, and I'm here with, as always, the DAWGS. It's been a long freaking season, ladies and gentlemen, and dogs who are present. It has been a long season of losses and wins and injured players and potential MVPs and then non-MVPs and not a lot of suspensions to talk about this year. Usually there's like a bunch of suspensions. Not a lot. Everybody got none of the good players that would actually get a suspension were on the field because they were hurt. So it's not like, the only person that I know of that got dinged is actually a New England Patriots wide receiver. His name is Kayshon Boutte. Yes, Boutte. And he, under the alias Kayshon Boutte 7, placed like 200 bets in his time at LSU and made $200,000 on those bets, by the way, is now under investigation. So that's the meme of the week, if anybody was wondering.
Meme approved.
But from memes, we go to dreams, right? We got the dream of the Super Bowl. It's been set. Almost a Nostradamus tinfoil hat move by Hound to have his beloved Kansas City Chiefs playing the Lions in the Super Bowl, who were just wishing that the game only lasted 30 minutes. It's just if it had been a 30 or 35 minute game, Lions would be there, but you got to play 60 minutes. So we have a Chiefs 49ers, much to the chagrin of the artist of the Super Bowl logo, Super Bowl. And it's a rematch. Unfortunately, I was kind of hoping for something a little bit new and exciting. The only non-rematch matchups would have been with the Lions. Basically, every other matchup would have been a rematch of the over the past 10 to 15 years. So that was what I was hoping for, but it didn't happen. So we're here. We got to talk about Brock Purdy. We got to talk about Patrick Mahomes. We got to talk about all kinds of people. But let's just talk generally about the playoffs. We haven't done a pod since we made our predictions, so we'll start with LB. LB, kind of give me some of your thoughts on some of the teams and some of the games, whatever game you feel sticks out to you. Just let's hear your thoughts on the playoffs as a whole.
The playoffs were pretty interesting this year, I think, in terms of how certain teams got hot and then certain teams kind of fizzled out or had a heartbreaking into their season, like the Bills. Unfortunately, seems like they can't get over the hump. With the Chiefs, seems like that's the monkey they can't get off their back. I'm sure we all saw that, and I'm sure those listening know what I'm referencing, the missed field goal wide right. This season to end their season after a heck of a run there, second half of the season to just make the playoffs, and then not only make the playoffs but then get a home field game. That was tough to watch. So that one sticks out of my head. Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers beating the brakes off the Eagles. That sticks out. Super happy for Baker and the boys down there. Although they did eventually get knocked out. The Green Bay game against the Cowboys. Love seeing the Cowboys lose. That was awesome. Green Bay stomped them down there in Dallas. The Browns and the Texans, that was a wild game.
Yeah.
Texans put it on them. I did not see it going that way. Seems like it was so long ago.
It does.
It's just crazy. And then, of course, the Lions beating the Rams with Matt Stafford coming back into town. That was awesome storyline. And then, of course, the Lions falling short against the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. It was, of course, mixed emotions, I think, for Lions fans with some of those, I don't know if you want to call them questionable calls, but certainly not, textbook calls in terms of game management by Dan Campbell deciding not to go for it. The field goal on that second 4th down attempt late in the game when they were down 3, that certainly sticks out in my head. In that game, the 49ers and the Lions game was tough for me to pick a side, because on the one hand, I've been saying it all year that I wanted Christian McCaffrey to get to the Super Bowl. He paid his dues in that crappy team in Carolina he was on for so long, so it's good to see a former Panther represented in the Super Bowl, along with Steve Wilkes, the defensive coordinator out there, and some other guys. And of course, Brock Purdy continuing to kind of silence some of the haters and step up big and big time moments and times in the game. Not only against the Lions coming over a 17-point deficit and ultimately winning that game, but also the Green Bay game the week before. He put together a really, really big touchdown drive to win that game. And again, he just continues to show his clutchness, and he just seems like he has that it factor. He's not going to be throwing for 450 yards a game and 5 touchdowns necessarily, but just super happy for those guys. And of course, really also devastated for the Lions, just because they've had so many just poor seasons and heartbreak. And then, of course, this year getting so close but so far to the Super Bowl was painful. I was pulling for them from afar, but still happy for Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey. And of course, I was surprised how bad the Ravens looked against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I did not understand that game plan from the offensive game plan perspective from the Ravens, but
why run the football? Why would they do that?
I mean,
yeah, who knows, man. It seemed like they got away what was working for them all year and tried to play a different style of football, a different brand of football that the Chiefs just were able to essentially have their way with them on defense. Defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, I thought, called a great game, and I thought the offensive coordinator for the Ravens called a terrible game. And ultimately, I think that's what was the difference maker. But yeah, awesome playoffs. Super excited for the Super Bowl. Excited for the rematch, and just really looking forward to see how this shakes out.
Absolutely. I don't know if anybody expected that Ravens-Chiefs game to be as low scoring as it was, too. I'm sure most people expected it to be a little bit more, at least in the mid-20s, but it just didn't work out that way. Almost 15-19, which would have that would have been scary. Wild. That would have been scary if any of these games ended up 15-19. But I think this might be Nostradamus trying to take our noses off the trail here a little bit. He said before the pod, because we accused him of being a time traveler, he did say that if he was a time traveler, he would have not picked the exact matchup for the Super Bowl, but would have rather picked the closest thing other than that, which he pretty much did. So, aside from that, Hound, let me hear some of your thoughts on just the playoffs in general. I'm sure you have a little bit different perspective, considering your number one, you have a team in the playoffs, number one, but number two, that your team is now playing in the big game. So let's hear about why Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback of all time right now, because he's only been to 4 Super Bowls and only won 2 of them.
That's true. Well, and maybe 3. We
don't know.
So the playoffs, pretty normal. I've seen this all before.
Rub it in.
I saw the script at the beginning of the season and picked Chiefs Lions, and I guess they made a revision halfway through, but they kept most of the script intact. Chiefs make it to their 4th Super Bowl in 5 years. Very dominant. I've been watching all the Chiefs games. Been very excited. We've been riding our defense and playing mistake-free football and offense throughout the whole regular season. The main theme I had for the Chiefs was to stop making the mistakes. Right, we'd always be like losing the turnover battle and have horrible penalties, and if we could clean that up, we'd be an okay team. We'd be good, and that's what they've been doing in the playoffs. Mahomes has not thrown a single interception. We've had a couple turnovers. One was when it didn't matter versus the Dolphins, and the other was versus the Bills that went into the end zone, and that was a whole ordeal. But luckily, our defense was good enough to keep the Bills out of our end zone. But this is probably the most Patriots-like Chiefs team that we've had, I would say. Not just simply from like a dynasty standpoint, but more just from how we present ourselves and how we're viewed by the league, I would say. Because we kind of been the playoff fill-ins this year, I would say. Very few people are rooting for the Chiefs, which I understand. I mean, if I was a fan of another team, I wouldn't be rooting for the Chiefs. I never root for the most dominant team. I'm always rooting for underdogs. But the Chiefs are my team, so I have to. So, and here's an interesting fact. So, the Chiefs this year did not have a single 1,000-yard receiver or 1,000-yard rusher, right? None of our playmakers had 1,000 yards on the entire season. Not even Travis Kelce or Rice.
I thought Rice
or Pacheco.
did.
Nope. He was 40 yards off and he didn't play the last game. So, and that's kind of like what sealed it. And Kelce was 16 yards off and didn't play the last game, to rest. So we didn't have a single 1,000-yard rusher or receiver. And you know who was the last team to make the Super Bowl without a 1,000-yard receiver or rusher?
So sure was the
Patriots.
2018 Patriots.
2018 Patriots, right? 2018 Patriots. And it's very similar. Strong defense and have a special quarterback who can make a few plays when you need them throughout the game and not make the big mistakes. And that's what we've been doing in the playoffs. We weren't always doing that during the regular season, but we fixed it by the playoffs, and it's working. Yeah. And the best decision the Chiefs made this entire playoff run, not having Sky Moore or Kadarius Toney activated. Neither of them have been activated. Kadarius Toney's kind of complaining about that on social media, apparently. But MVS, surprisingly, has made some crucial catches in the playoffs. He's made some of the best catches all year for this Chiefs team. So he's officially okay. But he's okay.
He's officially allowed on the field if Hound was coaching.
Yes, he's okay. He's made up for his mistakes. But if the Chiefs win this Super Bowl, they're undoubtedly a dynasty.
Sure.
Back to back, 3 Super Bowl, there's really
4
no
years, the whole thing.
Yeah, there's no question really.
No.
If they win. If they lose, people will kind of debate because a lot of people say you have to have 3. But neither here nor there. The most proud moment I had during the playoffs was not with the Chiefs. It was the fact that I predicted that the Cowboys was going to lose to the Packers.
Yeah, that was wild.
I called that. It wasn't logical. My whole logic was the Cowboys are going to do Cowboys things.
And guess what they did?
And lose to the Packers. And they did that exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
There's no logic to it.
None.
There really isn't. But, Jerry Jones saying that next year they're going all in on the Super Bowl because apparently they weren't this year. So,
Jerry.
But I think the Packers, by everyone was overlooked. No one really,
I agree.
paid much attention to the Packers. And my prediction is the Packers are going to be next year's Detroit Lions, basically. They're going to be the team that makes a big leap and maybe even gets it to an NFC championship or further. They've kind of just had the same process that the Lions had last year where they got good late, except this time the Packers actually made it to the playoffs. And now with that experience, they're going to go into next year, in an excellent spot. So that'll be a very interesting division.
Yes.
The NFC North.
Yes.
So yeah, overall, the playoffs have been pretty fun. It's been fun to see the Chiefs win back-to-back playoff games as the underdogs. So that's always fun. And again, it's very funny to see everyone be frustrated that the Chiefs keep winning, because it reminds me of when the Patriots kept winning because everyone hated the fact that they were winning.
Yeah.
Me included.
Yeah.
So it's a very strange spot for the Chiefs to be the villains, but we've played that role pretty well. Whether it's kicking Justin Tucker's, field goal equipment during,
yeah, what was up with that?
Whatever. Well, apparently Justin Tucker's like, I have 100 and like over 100-yard field I can practice on, but I must practice where Mahomes is at. That's where I have to. But it's all in good fun. They're trolling each other.
Yeah, but my understanding though is that there's 100 yards for Patrick Mahomes to go practice in, and he had to go practice where Justin Tucker was, because Justin Tucker is undoubtedly a GOAT. Like, there's name another historic kicker other than Adam Vinatieri.
That's true.
There's none.
That's true.
So Justin Tucker is the absolute GOAT of kickers. Okay.
Yes, and he can practice wherever he wants.
Right. Leave him alone. Okay, I understand. And whose house was it? It was his.
Yeah, I mean, fair, but I mean,
but he's Patrick Mahomes. That's all I'm trying to say.
He's practicing Mahomes.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is like people have been interviewing both of them, and Mahomes even said, like, he's like, it's fine, it's whatever, but. Because people on social media are making a bigger deal of it.
Because the bully would be like, yeah, no, it wasn't a big deal.
Well, but Mahomes is like, I've had field goal kickers kick on the same side as the opponents 2 times in my life, and it was only Justin Tucker. Every time I visited a stadium, kickers have always kicked on the other side with their team, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So usually your opponents are on one side of the field, the other team's on the other side of the field. Kind of normally how it works. But Justin Tucker makes his own rules. He doesn't have to follow the rules. If you make over a 60-yard field goal, you can do whatever you want. So
that definitely seems like to be the rule, for sure.
Yes. So, wow. It's not that big of a deal.
We spent way more time on that than I wanted to. But
it's drama.
It's drama.
And we haven't even mentioned Taylor Swift yet.
Oh my gosh. We'll save that for the Super Bowl predictions, huh?
Yes.
So
yes.
All right. So, by the way, I'm betting the over on 12.5 times that they'll cut to her. So,
you want to hear an have you looked at the stat of how much time she took up during the AFC Championship game?
No.
34 seconds.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't think it was that much.
Yeah, right? Surprisingly, during that game, they didn't show her that much.
It's because
for the Super Bowl, that might change. Though.
Yeah, it's because it wasn't in Arrowhead, so the cameras aren't as focused. They didn't know where to look. They didn't.
Like, where's she at?
Jason Kelsey might have got more screen time than she did.
I mean, I'm okay with that.
Me too. The man was
very funny.
I listened to a part of his podcast and he said he told his wife that the shirt will come off and there will be beer everywhere. And his wife told him not to, and he said, "I'm not asking," and then proceeded to get
there will be just that.
There will be posters of that somewhere. Like it's fantastic.
Yeah.
My thoughts on the playoffs this year. It felt a little bit like there's two script writers. There's a script writer for the AFC and a script writer for the NFC, right?
Sure.
And I feel like the AFC guy just kind of copy and pasted. It felt like he's
a sitcom writer.
It felt
he
like
just does the same thing over and over.
It felt like the guy that, Avengers Endgame came out, and then the Star Wars, the end of the Star Wars trilogy came out like within the next year. And if you took the movies as outlines, they're the same exact movie, just with different characters. Oh, woe is me. Oh, it's all over. Oh, snap. It's the entire galaxy. It's like, or how, whatever.
Yeah.
It just felt like the AFC writer decided, you know what? I'm going to copy and paste the 2018 Patriots. I felt that too. And if you had explained it so well, Hound, I would have. So I'm glad you took most of my talking points. Then they took just the outline of the 2018 Patriots and put it on the Kansas City Chiefs, which is to me a similar team, except I don't think they run the ball as well as New England did during that year.
That's fair.
But that's neither here nor there. And the NFC writer is just a troll. He's like, you know what? Yeah. I'm going to do what everybody wants. I'm going to let the Lions get the NFC Championship game. I'm going to do what everybody, I'm going to make everybody who bet on the Cowboys to win a game to lose a bunch of money, because it's funny if Jordan Love is actually good. It's also funny if the Eagles are bad after being in the Super Bowl. And it'd be also funny if Baker Mayfield made himself a lot of money. All these things that really shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And then he does the ultimate twist at the end and allows for the team that everybody thought was by and large the best team in the NFC win the whole thing. So my question is, who's writing the Super Bowl, right? Like, is it like they each get a half, like how does that work? Or do they get a quarter apiece and they, one gets the first and third, the other gets the second and fourth? Like, how does that work? But it felt like the writer for the NFC wanted to make sure that any idea of a script at all was thrown out, and the other writer wanted to make sure that everybody knew there was a script. So I don't know, but quite an interesting, just overall, a lot of Shanahan disciples as far as the coaches that were coaching the offenses this year. Matt LaFleur being one, Bobby Slowick in Houston. I think the guy who's running the Browns is from the McVay tree, if I'm not mistaken. But interesting enough, and obviously the McVay comes from the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan type stuff. So it's all Shanahan, really. But everybody likes to credit. Shanahan. Yeah, McVay was obviously in the playoffs, so himself.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those teams. But the two teams is the originator in the Super Bowl is the originator in Kyle Shanahan, and then a guy that has got his own brand in oh my gosh, Andy Reid. I'm so sorry. I just total brain fart. I was like, it's the Nuggets guy.
Get those Nuggies.
Yeah. I say nuggies way too often in my normal vocabulary. I tell you that much right now. But anyway, so it's interesting to see how different styles of offense, even though the big thing to do is to hire the next Sean McVay or the next Kyle Shanahan, whatever. But it's interesting to see that old ways still work. You still see, I think it's Greg Roman who runs the offense for the Ravens, who, they made sure. Now it felt more like a defensive win for them against the Texans, but the offense looked good in the second half and has looked fabulous the second half of the season. And obviously Andy Reid doing Andy Reid things and just drawing up some good soup, just good soup. But a few thoughts I have: the young QBs coming out and beating the established guy, Jordan Love beating Dak Prescott, and CJ Stroud beating Joe Flacco, who, according to your politicians, is an elite quarterback. So
yes.
So that's interesting. No surprise that a hobbled Dolphins couldn't beat Patrick Mahomes in the cold and snow. So nobody's surprised there. I am curious to know if the seeding would have worked out differently to where the Rams and Lions didn't have to play each other first off, how far the Rams would have gone. I'd be really curious because I feel like the Rams would have beaten a lot of the teams that ended up making, playing in the second round. So that would have been, to me, that would have been interesting to see, is how far that team could have gone if their cards would have played a little differently as far as who they had to play. I think Dan Campbell is going to have to take a really hard look at the way he coaches some of these decisions after this year. I hope he doesn't take his foot off the gas. I just hope he understands that you have to brake a little when you drift. That's all it comes down to, because I'm all for scoring as many points as you possibly can, and just being aggressive, because he converted some third downs in the NFC Championship game that on runs, like on 3rd and 12, because he understood he was going to go for it on first down regardless, and 49ers were not thinking run, so he got Jahmyr Gibbs in some good situations and got some first downs they had no business getting on third down, to where you didn't even have to worry about it. And that's all, it's all relative to how the way his mindset, his coaching style works. And I think it's fantastic for the culture there, but you got to take points when you got them, when you need them, that you just have to learn when to drift. That was one of my big hang-ups on the way he was coaching that game. I don't know. I've always thought of different situations. You never know how many times you're going to get the ball in a half, especially towards the end of the game. But a particular game I remember is an AFC Championship a handful of years ago that the Broncos ended up winning with Peyton Manning. And New England ended up losing by like 2 points or something like that. And, they had to go for 2 with like no time left, and they didn't get it, because Gronk was the totality of our offense that year.
Yeah.
But there was, if you look back at the game, there was like there was 2 or 3 opportunities for New England to actually kick field goals, and they were aggressive and went for it on fourth down and didn't get the, they didn't convert. So that's 6 points, and that's Steven Gutskowski out there, who was a fantastic kicker. But that was 6 points that you had, and we only needed 3 of them. So if they had made the decision to go for a field goal in one of those situations, they win the game. Now, I understand that sometimes kicking field goals and resetting the field position and that sort of thing actually ends up working against you in different ways and changes the dynamic of the rest of the game. I understand that. But at the same time, points are points, and the whole point of how you win games is by scoring points. And if you're in a situation where it's down to the wire and you need some points, take some points, even if it's not enough, it sets you up better so that you don't have to do as much the next time you have the ball. So that's just my philosophy. I'm not being paid by anybody. I lose a Madden game every once in a while, so maybe my philosophy only works in Madden. But that's just a few of my thoughts. Other than the young QBs like C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love getting some really valuable playoff experience early in their careers, which I think is going to really do some wonders for them. I think their confidence is gonna be through the roof. And Tua actually getting his first playoff experience it might have done more to hurt his ego than it did to help his confidence. So that's kind of where I'm at on some of that stuff. But overall, I was relatively pleased with the playoffs. There were some really good games. There's a couple blowouts, but it felt like the blowouts were fun. Like they were fun blowouts. There wasn't like, oh my gosh, like the Ravens are up on, somebody by like 40 or something like that. It was always the underdog getting up on the team. So, which was cool to see. So fun playoffs, not exactly how I wanted it to go, but I got the AFC completely right, except for I chose the Ravens over the Chiefs to make the Super Bowl. So I had every game called right, except for the AFC Championship. Boo-hoo. Oh, well, that's just how my season has gone. Now that we've kind of talked about the playoffs, let's talk about the big game now. Let's talk about, number one, what our predictions were at the beginning of the season, why they're wrong, and then what we actually think will happen in the matchup we actually do have. So we'll start with LB. He's sure he's been chomping at the bit to talk ball here on this. So let's hear it. What went wrong? You were half right. You said the 49ers would be in the Super Bowl. So Congratulations on getting one of them right. In fact, we'll give you a round of applause for that. Very nice, 49ers. But you had the Bengals, who didn't even make the playoffs. Now, there's some reasoning for that I'm sure you'll get into. But let's hear why the 49ers pick was right, why the Bengals pick was wrong, and why 49ers Chiefs is going to go the way you expect it to.
Yeah, so first, the 49ers, I just think, are the most complete team in football. From offense, defense, special teams, and coaching, I think it's just the most complete and dominant team. They find ways to win games as opposed to losing them, even if they don't play their best football, like the Packers game in the playoffs, for example. They didn't look great, but nonetheless found a way to win. And so I think last year that team was very similar, obviously. And last year, when Purdy got hurt in the conference championship game, that team basically just fell apart because their other quarterback got hurt too. So that was kind of a wash. But coming into this season, they really didn't lose anybody. They gained experience. Purdy got experience. Continue to get more reps. I mean, the guy's only in his second year, not even starting for 2 full years, and he's going to the Super Bowl as his second year. Essentially, his first full complete season playing. He's going to the Super Bowl. So that was kind of my my expectation based on how they looked last year. I thought that they would kind of pick up where they left off once they were healthy. And then for the Bengals, I thought they would kind of bounce back this year. But unfortunately, Joe Burrow got hurt with a season-ending injury to his throwing arm. So that's never ideal. And that team kind of goes as Joe Burrow goes. And when he went down, basically all hope was lost for that prediction, which stinks. But as far as the Super Bowl goes, I think I'm going with the 49ers here in a close one. I think 49ers just find the way to just put a full, complete game together. I think they're the most complete team, most talented team on all phases of the football. Offense, defense, special teams. I don't think there's a weakness in that team. And again, 2 phenomenal teams, 2 phenomenal coaches in Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan. Of course, the Chiefs have some more experience on their roster in terms of playing in the Super Bowl. You know, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid, they've been here for now their 5th time, I guess, going to the Super Bowl as a team and as a collective group. So of course that's gonna factor in. But no, I think the 49ers pull it out. I just think they're too complete of an offensive unit, and anyone on that offense can beat you. Even the backups, even the less premier named guys like the Jawan Jennings and the guys like that who are, they're not the George Kittles, they're not the McCaffreys or the Brandon Ayuks or the Debos. But again, those guys still, as we saw in the playoffs, when Debo went down and was out, guys stepped up and made plays. And of course, now that they're going to be healthy, or I anticipate them being healthy, especially Debo, I think he just adds another layer. Of course, you have, in my opinion, probably one of the best 3 players in football outside of the quarterback position, and Christian McCaffrey on your team. And I think that's going to be a matchup nightmare for the Chiefs. I don't know how they're going to account for all of the weapons and all the schematic, get guys open plays that Kyle's going to have dialed up. I don't think they're going to be able to double team anybody because, well, you're going to be able to double team one. You're going to have to probably pick your poison on who you want to double team. Or, maybe leave a safety over top and bracket a guy on the outside. But again, that leaves, that could leave Christian one-on-one in the slot underneath, or one-on-one on the linebacker, or Debo one-on-one, or stuff like that. Kittle one-on-one. And of course, we saw Brock. He's not afraid to tuck the ball and run when needed to. And I think he's more athletic and has a faster twitch than people want to give him credit for. In that Lions game, there's 3 big scrambles where he was running away from defenders. And so I think his legs are going to come into play. And much like we've seen Patrick Mahomes do in years past, when you need a first down late in the game, or, just be able to extend the play long enough to make a big completion, I think that's going to go and be a factor for this 49ers team. I do anticipate being a good game. I think it's going to probably be one of those team with the ball last wins, or the team gets a stop and wins on the last possession of the game, something like that. But I do anticipate the 49ers winning. I'm going to go 31-27.
I'm going to give you your flowers here, Hound. You picked the Lions versus the Chiefs for your Super Bowl prediction, and you were 14 minutes off of that being correct. So for that, we're going to give you an air horn there. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Your tinfoil hat senses were very close. I think you had the blue on the top to avoid the laser, but I tell you, might have been a little. It might have been a little too royal blue. It needed to be more sky blue. But well, let's hear your counter argument to why the Chiefs are probably going to win the Super Bowl this year, and obviously why your Chiefs Lions Super Bowl prediction was close, but not close enough.
Yeah, no, I predicted Chiefs and Lions before the season even started, which I'm very proud of. If only Dan Campbell would have known how much was on the line when he was playing in the NFC Championship game. He's playing for a Super Bowl, but he played it loose. But if he knew that my pride was on the line, maybe he would have made smarter decisions. So just too sad.
I hear you.
But for the Super Bowl, we do have Chiefs versus 49ers, which is going to be interesting because we haven't played each other this year. So that's kind of nice. It's always fun to have a Super Bowl with teams that haven't played each other because you don't really know what to expect. But I am going to have Chiefs beating the 49ers 24-20. I'll get the score out early here.
Excellent.
And I have 3 main reasons why I think the Chiefs will beat the 49ers. First is Chiefs home away from home. We've been to the Super Bowl 4 out of 5 times, 4 out of the last 5 seasons. Mahomes is obviously very experienced in the Super Bowl. Kelsey, all of our old players, Andy Reid. But the fact that we went to the Super Bowl last season is a very huge benefit because that means that almost everyone on our team, except our rookies and the few free agents we brought in, were in this exact same position just 12 months ago. And that goes into your mindset when practicing and preparing for this game. So Chiefs are home away from home. They've been here. They know that's chaotic, and you have a lot more media and obligations when leading up to this game. And hopefully they'll be a lot more focused versus some of the inexperience that are on the 49ers. Now, to give the 49ers props, they have been to the Super Bowl like 4 or 5 years ago. So it's not like everyone on their team is inexperienced either. But the Chiefs have almost everyone on their team having that Super Bowl experience already. So that'll definitely help. Second is the fact that the second half is on lockdown for the Chiefs. Our defense is very good. Second in points allowed this year, second in yards allowed this year. But we're even better in the second half of football games. Since we had that devastating loss to the Bills in the regular season, which is around mid-season, and including that game, the Chiefs have allowed only about 4 points per second half since that time. And there's been a lot of games played. Steve Spagnuolo, our defensive coordinator, is so good at making adjustments during games. And once he makes that adjustment, teams just cannot score on him. It's very difficult. And the one thing that the 49ers have been benefiting from in their last 2 playoff games have been, we're down and out, but the other team kind of makes a few mistakes or are slowing down, and we're able to creep back into this game. But if the 49ers get into a position where they're down 3 scores like they were against the Lions, I don't think that they're going to be able to get back into this game versus our defense. They're going to have to keep it at least very close going into the second half. And the fact that I'll just talk about our defense really quick. Our defense has done so well this year, and I would say it's mostly due to Snead and McDuffie, our 2 cornerbacks. We have 2 amazing corners. Snead had not allowed a single touchdown all regular season. And McDuffie, I can't remember how many touchdowns he allowed, but he was one of the top-rated cornerbacks by Pro Football Focus.
First team all pro. He's a beast.
Yes, and Snead should have been. Like Snead, you could arguably say is even better. Like they're both really good. And they're both able to lock down whoever they're, paying attention to. So that defense is loaded. And they're mostly healthy, except for one defensive lineman on a menu, but it will survive. We're getting our linebackers back and healthy, corners backs, everything. So our defense will be ready to go. But then my last point is iron sharpens iron. The Chiefs have been battle tested throughout this playoffs, and I don't think people quite realize that. The Chiefs in this playoffs played the top 3 AFC offenses by scoring, and they also played the best defense in the entire league leading up to the Super Bowl. We played the Dolphins, the Bills, and the Ravens. Top 3 offenses in the AFC, and the Ravens also had the best defense of any team in the league. And yet we were able to defeat all of them. Mostly through our defense. Our defense was able to slow down all 3 of those teams pretty well. Ravens, we threw them off their game somehow, and they decided to throw the football. Don't know why. Versus the Bills, we kept them out of the end zone quite a few times and made them not have any big plays in that game. And the same thing could go with the Dolphins. Our team has been battle tested versus the 49ers, who, yes, they played the Packers. Packers, I believe, is a good team, but very little experience. And the same thing could be said with the Lions. They played against 2 teams that have very little experience going deep into the playoffs. And they were at home in both of those games. So going into this playoffs, or into the Super Bowl, I think the Chiefs, because of their previous experience, because of how good their defense is, especially in the second half, and because of how much in just the last month we've been battle tested, will help us beat the 49ers and have a back-to-back Super Bowl victory.
And that concludes Hound's dissertation on why the Chiefs are the best team in the world. I mean, it started to sound almost scholarly at some point. That was,
I know. Oh, it is.
It was very, very.
We're talking about legendary stuff here.
I hear you. There's a dynasty on the line. Yes. I'll be honest. My mind has changed a couple times after listening to both of your points. And I think I finally come down to a decision. The score is going to be 37-34. That's what I'm going to start with. 37-34, high scoring game. I'm going to tell you what I think the game plan is going to be for these teams. There's a gentleman on the 49ers that his name got called quite a bit during the NFC Championship game. And usually getting your name called is a good thing. Unless, of course, you're a defensive back. Usually that means you're getting balls thrown your way, and they're usually getting completed. There's a gentleman named his last name's Lenore, but his first name is, oh my gosh, Diamadore, something like that. Forgive me.
Sounds right.
Yes. He's number 2, and he's listed as a defensive back. Not as a corner, a defensive back. So probably like a safety corner hybrid. The Lions, I noticed, especially on crucial downs, like third down, they found ways to get Amon-Ra St. Brown or somebody Reynolds, just one of their better route running receivers, on him when it mattered. And that seemed to be how the Lions kind of got up early. I think the 49ers adjusted a little bit later because I don't remember his name being called in the second half. So they might have adjusted to where that doesn't happen anymore. But in the first half, he got picked on quite a bit. And the way I expect this game to kind of go, I think the Chiefs are going to get up in the first half. And I think they might even get up a little big, like a 17-7 type situation, something like that. 17-6, 16-10, somewhere between like an 8-point to 14-point game, somewhere in there. And I expect that's what Andy Reid is going to do, is find ways to get Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce on this guy and just find ways to get people open using that. I'm sure Mahomes is going to come out firing. I'm sure Mahomes is going to come out playing really well. I think the Chiefs might surprise the 49ers a little bit with their ability to run the ball. I think that'll be the deal. So at halftime, I'm saying it's like a 17-10 or something like that. Just Chiefs up. I agree with Hound. The Chiefs have definitely beat better quality teams throughout the playoffs. And they also had to beat an extra team because they weren't the number 1 seed. The 49ers got the bye. But I would argue that the 49ers beat the 2 hottest teams in the league outside of the Ravens, because the Packers absolutely rolled into the playoffs without anybody realizing it. And Jordan Love was by far the hottest quarterback on the planet. Like, there's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. That dude was a dog in the last handful of the season, and he showed it. Even against the 49ers, he showed it. And the Lions have just been on a tear this entire season. They have just absolutely scared the living daylights out of every team they've played. So I think the 49ers also have demons that they're fighting, particularly demons that have latched on to Kyle Shanahan and his ability to call plays late in games. But with those demons, I think there is light that's coming out of the darkness here a little bit. And that gentleman's name is Brock Purdy. And I think his clutch factor has overcome some of the late game woes, especially considering, like LB said, the way he's used his legs. The one thing that I noticed that Hound didn't talk very much about was the 49ers defense, who I thought made good adjustments, especially in the Lions game. And I'd expect their defense to make adjustments. And I'd expect the Spagnolia defense to make adjustments as well. And I think it'll be a pretty tit-for-tat game for most of it. But I think the momentum is going to shift kind of like it has in the last handful of games for the 49ers, somewhere in the late third quarter. I think there's going to be a turnover of some kind. I don't know how. I mean, that pass rush is a pass rush of all-stars between Chase Young, Nick Bosa. I mean, you name it. They got one of everybody. And I know that offensive line for the Chiefs is good, but it's not invincible. So I would have, even though I do expect it to be a game that the Chiefs get up, I don't expect it to be one that the Chiefs stay up the whole time. I think it'll go back and forth. Similar to LB, I do think that it'll probably come down to the last 5 minutes, 2-minute drive, something along those lines. A lot of these Super Bowls tend to end that way unless the game was kind of decided early on. But I think that what it's going to come down to is the 49ers forcing Patrick Mahomes to make a mistake, or one of these other players to make a mistake. I think the talent discrepancy between the two teams is more than what people are giving credit for. And I think that eventually the team that has that's more balanced and has the better talent will win the game. So I'm picking the 49ers to win the Super Bowl this year. I almost don't want to, because there was some rumors about Andy Reid potentially retiring, and then Bill Belichick coming and sliding in there for a couple years. But I just think that would be fascinating. So I listen. Andy Reid has
the best back-to-back coach transition ever.
Yeah, I mean, you'd only get him for 3 years, if that. But I mean, he would just go from one dynasty to another, and then he'd run you guys into the ground with his decision making in the draft. But yeah, so that's where I have it. I've got 49ers after. I think it'll be one of those things where there'll be a turnover or two in the second half that makes a difference. And two, your point, Hound, about the Chiefs overcoming the defense of the Ravens, I would actually disagree. You guys only scored 17 points against the Ravens. Now that was enough because your defense did enough to stop a team with no plan at offense. There will be a plan in place, and Shanahan will have a good plan. And it may take some time to get off the ground, just considering I mean, everybody's going to be hyped and juiced, and that's always how it goes. My random bold prediction, there's going to be no controversy from the refs. That's my bold prediction.
Boldest prediction ever.
Yeah, facts. Facts. So to recap, LB's got the 49ers winning 31-27. Hound has the Chiefs winning 24-20. I have the 49ers winning 37-34. And we'll see how we go. Let's see if anybody has a tinfoil hat. Probably not. If somebody does, it'll be Hound. But it's just how this year has gone. To wrap it up, we could, maybe pick a potential Super Bowl MVP, and we'll do that. But on top, so what I want is this: I want a Super Bowl MVP prediction, and that's the prospective, right? But I want some perspective as well as your dog of the playoffs. I want to hear one player who you thought did wonders for their team, regardless if they ended up making it to the Super Bowl or not. So we'll start with LB. LB, let me hear your dog of the playoffs and your Super Bowl MVP.
So dog of the playoffs going to be Christian McCaffrey. Definitely got to shout out the boy. This is just his rushing stats for this playoff season. 37 attempts, 188 yards, 4 touchdowns, averaging 5.1 yards per carry. That's just rushing alone. Doesn't even factor in his receiving, which you can add in another minimum 60 yards in there in the last couple games. So for playoffs, give me Christian McCaffrey. And then for MVP, I'm taking, I don't know if it's gonna be a long shot, but I'm gonna take a shot in the dark here, going Brock Purdy from Mr. Irrelevant to Super Bowl MVP in just 2 years. Once removed from a season-ending, which is not really season-ending because it was the last game of their season, but injury last year. Y'all get the picture. I'm going Brock Purdy, Super Bowl MVP. I think he's gonna finally put all the haters to bed. I think he's going to ball out and do his thing. And I think he's going to light it up. And that's going to be one of the main reasons I think they'll get the dub over the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Heck yeah. Love to see it. Kind of thought you would go McCaffrey after you started with McCaffrey, but respect. Hound, who do you got as your dog of the playoffs and then your Super Bowl MVP?
Okay, so dog of the playoffs, going to go unconventional, but we've done this before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pick Steve Spagnuolo. Steve Spagnuolo. Because one, he's on my team, so obviously I have to pick somebody from my team. But also, the fact that he has the youngest defense in the NFL by age, just on defense. And he's turned it into the second best defense in scoring and in yards allowed, which is pretty rare. Like the Ravens are number 1 in scoring. They're like 10th in yards allowed. And the Browns are like first in yards allowed, but, around 10th or 12th in scoring. The fact that he's got them, our defense, rotating on all cylinders, firing on all cylinders, and to stopping offenses, I think is just so overlooked. We have not allowed a single team to get 30 points. We've only allowed a team to score 30 points, I believe, once in the last 2 seasons.
Wow.
In the Super Bowl against the Eagles. But definitely not this year. We haven't allowed it. And again, like I've said, we've played almost all of the top offenses. Fun fact, if we were to look at the 49ers, they allowed 31 points in their very last game against the Lions. Because we do allow points early on in games, but Steve Spagnuolo's ability to just make changes on the spot is what really drives that team. And the fact that his players are able to understand what he's trying to put down, because he has a very complicated defense.
Yep.
And the fact that he has young guys who are able to make those changes is very impressive. Because if we were to be realistic, most defensive coordinators are very smart people. Mm-hmm. They know what needs to be done, most likely. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, usually there's a disconnect between them and their players.
Right.
But he's just, the connection he has with his players is this next level. And, much like those Patriots teams, if it wasn't for the defense, we wouldn't have made it this far.
Yeah.
But, man, what a boss.
Yeah. Be careful. You sound like you're cheating on Matt Maggie a little bit there. You might want to be careful.
Hey, I like our coordinators. Our assistant coaches are great.
Heck yeah. So was that your dog of the playoffs, or was that your
That's my dog.
Okay.
That's not my MVP. I don't think I allow MVPs to go to coaches.
Okay.
My MVP is Kelsey, because, the script, that would make sense.
Yeah.
So
Heck yeah.
Let's be honest, that makes sense. Narratively.
Yeah, so, you got to get just got to get one more picture of him smooching Taylor Swift while he's holding up the. I don't even know. Do you get a little trophy for being Super Bowl MVP? I know you get a car or something.
Don't you get like a truck?
Yeah.
Silverado.
Yeah, right. Yep. Oh, that's too funny. My dog of the playoffs, I have a whole episode named it with his name in it, talking about how much we dislike this particular player on this pod. But I've got to give him props. He played well and almost beat the team that's in the Super Bowl. I'm giving my dog of the playoffs to Jordan Love. I think he played out of his mind against the Cowboys. Against that's not a slouch defense. That's a good defense. I know some of their dogs are hurt, but most of their defense was healthy, and it's not like they just recently lost their guys. They were established. They knew what they were doing. So for Jordan Love to go in there and play as well as he did, was really impressive, and to go toe to toe with the 49ers, who were supposed to be there, and the Packers were not supposed to be there, and they played like they didn't care about script writing or anything else, and that's really really cool to see. So I'm going to give my dog of the playoffs to Jordan Love. My Super Bowl MVP is going to be Christian McCaffrey. I think he's going to have 3 tutties. I don't know if they're all going to be rushing or whatever, but McCaffrey's going to have 3 touchdowns. He's going to have, 150 all scrimmage yards, and he's going to be the difference in the game, in my opinion. So I've got McCaffrey going to be your Super Bowl MVP. And,
let's go.
Yeah, so I'm sure that'll make LB happy.
Thank you for listening to the No Punt Intended Sportscast. Be sure to check out the Thinking Hound and to like, share, and subscribe.